Universal Soldier, Day of Reckoning, a natively shot 3D action movie from 2012. Now, the 3D version is available on this European Steelbook edition. Now, I've also seen listings for an Australian 3D version, but I am not aware of any North American Region A copies out there. Now, this movie begins with a very intriguing stereo moment where our bloody hero stares into this shattered mirror. You could almost see his world being shattered apart just in this one moment. Unfortunately, the overall scene is one of many moments that are marred by a strobing effect. It seemed to be an artistic choice to indicate our character's state of mind. What happens is any white light does a bit of a pulse, similar to what you might find with a broken fluorescent light. Throughout the movie, this experience ranges from what I found mildly uncomfortable to outright painful. I don't consider myself strobe sensitive, but there was a moment in this movie where I had to look away until it was over. Just a terrible idea that I wish they left out. I also sensed that the strobing, even when it was only lightly applied, seemed to make any stereo less effective. It's like my eyes just didn't want to see it. Despite all that, there are some interesting moments that were clearly there for the benefit of 3D viewing. We do stroll down some nice long hallways, and we find guns are frequently pointed directly at the camera, but never too extreme, which is a bit surprising, as this seems like just the type of movie that would toss everything it could find right at you. But it really doesn't let anything get too close. At a certain point, I even wondered if perhaps their rig just didn't allow for anything too extreme, or maybe their schedule didn't allow much time for playing around, so they just kept it safe and moved on as quick as they could. Now check out this brief shot of a hole in the door. The room is enjoyably deep, and it's kind of the opposite of a poke-out shot. It's an innie, not an outie. Occasionally we get some splats that can also be seen in stereo quite clearly. Overall, though, I found I didn't like the color temperature at all. I suppose it was meant to convey that sterile hospital institutional feel, but I found it often just felt like a camcorder home movie. And the scenery was rarely very scenic. The rooms just felt bland, and even the occasional nature walks through the trees felt like it was shot from too far away to deliver any significant stereo detail. Though we do get an entertaining trip to the sporting goods store, which helped break up some of this scenic monotony, I never understood cricket. There are many shots that are left flat but pushed to blend in with the scene. Now, I'll concede that there are big budget films like Transformers that do this intentionally, but my guess is here these either had the 3D perhaps messed up, or they used regular non-stereo B cameras to capture action from a different angle. But to be fair, most of those shots go by unnoticed unless you decide to pause and examine them. Story-wise, yeah, I don't know. I hate to outright call something a bad movie. Some movies just take more work to appreciate than others, so this is what I might call a challenging movie. Pull my finger. From what I understand, this is the 6th Universal Soldier movie. They are more like an anthology rather than a series, as they don't really connect all that well. Lundgren, in particular, has had some spectacular deaths, but always seems to return without explanation. Although in this installment, you could make an argument that he's probably some sort of clone. To this movie's credit, it does eventually deliver on its promise of being a bloody action movie. Meat is on the menu here. And to my surprise, at one point they managed to pull off a respectable single-camera, no-cut sequence that felt like something out of John Wick, albeit a budget John Wick. The story goes for mystery when a plain explanation probably would have worked better. The plot is not really understandable until the end, and even then it requires close attention to piece together what you saw. Some people enjoy this Twin Peaks approach, and I suppose this might be a guilty pleasure for that camp. However, I think most people who just came to see some fighting might zone out after 20 minutes and start skipping to find the action clips. You do get a nice car chase, which I was surprised they had to budget for, and for the most part it is filmed in very nice stereo, and we get to see some broken glass shattered. It is trying to present a noir mystery of the mind. It reminded me of actually The Mystic, Rudolf Steiner's mind exercise. He suggested anyone who wanted to develop psychic ability begin with an exercise where you think about the very last thing you did. Then recall the thing you did before that, and how one led to the other. And then go to the thing even before that, and again, how it connected. And then you repeat, keep going to the moment before that one, before that one. And it's a very revealing thing to try, especially if you've had an uneventful day. Myself, I began to notice how much I do by instinct, and often it's difficult to be sure if I'm actually remembering or just imagining how it probably would have happened. For example, I have a glass of water. Do I remember filling it? Or do I just remember what it's like to get some water and reconstruct what that probably looked like? The premise of this movie, in fact, is very similar to the 50s 3D movie Man in the Dark that I reviewed a few months ago, which is about a guy who gets his memories cut out of his brain. They even share a similar operation shot that is actually a pretty good 3D moment. Although there is an extreme close-up of a drill that they leave in flat. Again, I wonder if they realized in post that their 3D rig just couldn't pull off an extreme stereo close-up. The plot can also draw some comparisons to Fight Club, Blade Runner, even Total Recall, though I don't want to give the impression that this is going to be a profound experience. Having said that, though, it was effective enough to get me thinking about questions about memory and revenge. Do we engage with the world as we see it, or the world as we imagine it?